Okay, that should work. Hello, YouTube pipe community. This is Gary, the Gentleman Scholar. Give me a moment while I light up. If you feel like joining me, feel free. Might take a while. Hold on. This is going to be one of those light ups, isn't it? No, I don't care. I'm not going to let it be. Hold on. Welcome from my woodpile. I was going to try and get a view from over there. There's like two little stumps where the poles used to be that held up the porch, the former porch, but there was just too much of my leg showing, just a little too weird. So I said, forget it. I'll just set it right here in the wood, and there we go. This was in the cellar, and my husband was doing some painting, so it got a little paint speckle on it, but so I'm probably, like ingesting some sort of noxious fumes or something. But hey, if a corncob pipe in a workshop can't have the scars of building or something, or building a project, then I don't know what we're coming to. Anyway, one more time. Wind's blowing. Of course it is. Of course it is. Anyway, when last we left off, pardon me, I was heading down to training. And I have to say, this year I was a little bit cocky about it. Well, internally cocky, not outwardly cocky. I figure, oh, I've done this a million times. I really don't have to study that much. And to a degree, I was right. But in other degrees, I was wrong. I'll explain in a second. Oh, housekeeping. I have to admit, the Norman Rockwell line of tobacco is just probably my favorite. So I don't know. I don't know what that. I don't know what kind of palate I have here. I have there, but anyway. Um, yeah. So go down to training. No problem getting on the plane or anything like that. Get down to the hotel. No problem. Next morning, get up. Everything's actually there were no problems, to be quite honest. I mean, I passed it like I always do. It's just I didn't think it. I underestimated how challenging it was going to be. Um, you go through these door drills, and just to give you an example, you have to be proficient on certain exits. I want to say we have like 11, 8 to 11, like nine, let's say 9 aircraft in our fleet. And each door has a different way to open. A different way to open it, a different way to arm it, and I'll explain that in a second. Arm and disarm it, etc. so on. So basically, from the smaller planes up to the larger planes, narrow body to wide body, a flight attendant has to arm the door for departure, which means they have to, either manually put a girt bar down so that if you open up the door, a slide raft will inflate in case of an evacuation. The smaller planes, the two smaller planes, you have to do that manually. We take the girt bar off the brackets on the door and put it down to the floor so that now it's armed, which means if you open it up, a slide raft will deploy. On the larger, more complicated planes, this is achieved by some kind of lever action. And it varies from plane to plane. So we have to show that we can arm and disarm the doors, open and close them. And we also have to basically do a mock evacuation procedure, show that we know how to evacuate the aircraft out of said door. So far, so simple thing. And I've been doing this for 30 years, so you kind of have a hands down, but each plane is different. And so you have to know all the ins and outs of how to activate it, how to do it, how to activate it, this, that, and the other thing. So, and you have to remember certain things. You get graded on it, and when you go to training, you get kind of stressed out and you're like, why get stressed out over something you do every day? Well, the thing is, you're being graded on it, and your qualification with the FAA rides on whether you're proficient in these exit procedures. Pardon me. So, I go to do the A221 exit, and one thing they throw at you is a blocked exit, and I completely forgotten to study that. So, rather than going through I'm sitting there, they're playing their crash tape, which is pretending to be the pilot, and they're going, okay. Usually you start off with a brace for impact, in which we have to say bend over, stay down, until you hear easy Victor from the flight deck, in which case you get up and say stay seated, stay seated, stay seated. You click on the emergency light and you assess your conditions on the outside to see if it's okay to leave the aircraft. And then the captain will say, this is the captain, evacuate. So you release seatbelts, leave everything, release seatbelts, leave everything. So you open up the door and you reach down there to do the red manual inflation handle. The slide's going to inflate anyway, regardless, but that pulling the handle is a backup. And then you come this way, leave everything, jump and slide. Come this way, leave everything, jump and slide. So that's how it normally goes out of the front door. Then they have you do stuff out the third door and out of some of the windows. The commands are different, but the basic concept is the same. Anyone can learn it after 6 weeks of training. It's second nature to me. However, when you go to training, you get stressed because you're going to be graded, like I said. Except, here's the thing. Every year they seem to focus on some little bugaboo that they didn't focus on previously. A good example being, okay, this year we had to do the 717 mid tail cone exit. Okay, that's cool. Well, for some reason we didn't have to pull the red manual inflation handle. Don't know why they decided we didn't have to do that. If you pulled it, you didn't fail the test. And I'll tell you what happens when you fail the test in a minute. But that was their big thing. You don't have to pull it, which is cool. So we all kind of tell each other what's going on. This is what they expect, blah, 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 blah. So I didn't pull it this time, and of course I passed. But little things like that, they change and they tweak, which is natural, I guess, but it does nothing to help you while you're studying, I'll tell you that. But, so I get to the A221 door, and all of a sudden the captain starts, instead of starting with a brace for landing, he starts with evacuate. This is the captain, evacuate. So now my brain, they flipped the script on me, so now I'm like, running around, and I'm just, okay, release seatbelts, leave everything, I hit the emergency switch. No, first time I did hit the emergency switch. That's it. You were not successful. Oh Christ! Now your brain's frozen. So I did it again. You were not successful. Come to find, and they tell you they put a memory jogger on there, and then you come back at the end of the class, the breakfast club, like it's detention, and then you do it again. And if you're successful, you pass for another 18 months, which is cool. It used to be a year, now it's 18 months. Hold that thought. Use your finger. It's burning down pretty well, I gotta say. So now you've got this on your mind. We don't just do exits. We handle security. We do some emergency management EMVs. I don't even know what the hell that stands for. My company they love their anagrams, but EMV, event management validation. Anyway, we've got one of those. Luckily, I got one of the easier ones. You pretend you're on a flight, and they give you a scenario to deal with, and then they ask you, "Well, what did we do well?" And then, what could have gone better? And of course, I'm always tempted to say, well, I could have basically studied to get a real job and not have to deal with this crap every year. It's not that bad. I'm just kidding around. But to be honest, we've got that to do. We've got something called a red emergency, which is still overwhelming to me, even 30 years later. It's how to prep the cabin for a red level emergency, which means you have an EPT, an event preparation checklist, and they say it's easy. You just have to follow it along, and italics letters say what you announce. I don't think it's easy. I never thought it was easy, and people kept screwing it up during the EMVs, so they decided to break it down in a classroom setting which was better, I admit, because it's just too much information to hold in your head. Just to be quite honest. And I'm hoping if a real emergency happened, I'd get it out there and then I'd focus in on it. But, when you're getting graded on it in a classroom environment, you're just like, oh God, my head's going to explode. Anyway, so we do all this stuff, and that in the back of my mind is staying there. I have to go back. And yeah, I went back. There were other people who called back. I called it the Breakfast Club because, as you know, the Breakfast Club were kids that were held after for detention. And most people go and they correct their drill and they're free to go. They're cleared for another 18 months. But if you still screw it up, you have to come back the next day, which means you have to go to the hotel and let stew on that for a while. And then you come back and do it. But now you're on something called special tracking, which means now you're on the FAA's radar. And now you have to come back 9 months instead of 18 months to go through the entire thing all over again. I guess that was part of the deal when we went from 12 months to 18 months. But as I was waiting for the hotel van, the airport van to take me back to the airport to take the flight home from Atlanta to Boston, this fellow flight attendant comes out and she's in tears of frustration. And she says, "Well, what's on?" She goes, "I have to come back tomorrow." And pardon me, I'm going to quote her, to do the fucking 717 door. I'm like, oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. She goes, yeah, I did this last week. I got pulled out for the family emergency, so I think I was on their target list, so they didn't hear the door click against the fuselage or something. I'm like, and to be honest, yeah, they look for that. And I almost screwed up that one too, but my brute strength connected it to the fuselage. So yeah, the poor girl was just crying, and she was like telling us the whole thing on our ride to the airport, and I just have to say there, but for the grace of God go I, because that could have very easily have been me, because once you do something wrong, then your brain freezes up. When I was going to do my test, another guy, Andre, I remember him from years ago in Boston, he was at the 757 door or something, and the two supervisors were like having a quiet discussion whether they should pass him or not. I don't know what he missed, but I'm thinking, for the grace of God, but for the grace of God, there go I. I could feel the frickin' axes swinging around me. So, yeah. I'm cleared for another 18 months, thank God. And I've had remediation before, so it's not that big of a deal. And but still, it's just you're thinking, man, I thought I knew all this stuff. It's like, well, clearly you don't. So next time, prep up a little better, Gary. Anyway, I'm glad to be home. So the wood guy said he's coming to deliver the wood today. So I'm going to show you this. Hopefully I can get this back in the same position. I just ripped off all the tarp around the deck, and I laid down the tarp there for him to bring his two